The Ken Holland era is underway in LA, but are the Kings a better team? Eddie Garcia of Locked On LA Kings joins us to discuss that and a lot more about this offseason coming up next on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here. Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On LA Kings, Eddie Garcia. And Eddie, it's been a busy offseason for the Kings. Ken Holland comes on as the new GM. And a lot of people have mixed reviews about his moves in free agency. What's your take, and where does this team stand as of right now?
Well, I think a lot of those opinions are very understandable. He was active, but the players that were added were brought in to fill a specific need that he hopes that they can, contribute to getting this team finally out of the first round of the playoffs. I think I understand what he's trying to do. Whether it works out or not, obviously, will ultimately not be determined until the playoffs get here. But I completely understand a lot of the eyebrow raising, a lot of the skepticism with not only the players who were brought in, but the contracts that they were given as well. There were reports that the Kings were one of the finalists for Mitch Marner. That obviously didn't happen. Encouraging that they would be in on some of the big time free agents out there, because that's something that historically they've never done very well at. They add pieces. They've never hit a home run with big time free agents as far as signing them as free agents. They've made obviously huge trades, Wayne Gretzky being one of them. But for whatever reason, free agency is not a place where the Kings usually do any kind of damage, and that has continued again this season. But again, they're hoping that the pieces they brought in fill specific needs, and that can be part of the puzzle to get them past the first round of the playoffs, where they haven't been out since the 2014 championship.
What specific needs do you think that Holland was trying to address, and how much of it is we have to be better than the Edmonton Oilers?
Well, considering they've lost 4 years in a row to them, that's a pretty big component. And obviously Ken Holland knows the Oilers very well, having been the GM of them for many, many years recently. So as far as what they were looking to improve upon, it was, instead of maybe getting that big name up front, and they did apparently explore that with Mitch Marner, when that wasn't going to happen, it was making the bottom part of the team better. Strengthening the fourth line, which they have done, adding Corey Perry and Joel Armia, big guys who are veterans who can give the Kings hopefully four lines that they can roll through and use in the playoffs, because they didn't do that this year against the Oilers. They were basically a three-line team, and I think that hurt them as the series went along. And also the bottom pairing defensively. They got bigger. They got more veteran, if you want to put that kind of a spin on it, in Brian Dumoulin and Cody Ceci. They're, again, bigger guys who have played a lot of postseason hockey. The Kings played like 4.5 defensemen in the playoffs, and that didn't work ultimately against the Oilers, because it looked like they were worn down as it got into games 5 and 6. So that's where they hope that they're going to be better, bigger, more physical, and that will eventually be part of the puzzle to lead this team where they want to go, with everyone else either doing what they did last year or hopefully improving a little bit on what they did. They re-signed Andrei Kuzmenko, who was wonderful after he came over at the trade deadline, greatly helped on their power play, which had been very mediocre to bad all season. So a full season of him hopefully will help their power play, and he'll be playing in their top 6. They're also hoping Quentin Byfield takes a big step forward. He took a nice step forward last year, but they're looking for a bigger role from him. And then also on the back end, Brant Clark, a young player that they are hoping will take another step forward as well. So losing Vladislav Gavrikov, your best defenseman from a year ago, obviously is not good. It's certainly, I think, very easy to say that the defensive core isn't as good as it was a year ago. But when you look at the Kings' strength, which is team defense, I think they're hoping that Dumoulin and Ceci in a reduced role in that scheme will help them still be very adequate defensively. And then the depth on the fourth line, again, they hope the whole team is a bit more solidified, and then that will be the difference in the playoffs.
What do you think about the criticism that you've heard about Holland, and how fair is it?
I think in particular, the Cody Ceci deal has gotten a lot of pushback, and I think very fairly so. I do think in a third pairing role, he'll be fine. But if it's anything more than that, I think then that's asking too much. I know he played a top pairing role in San Jose. Of course, that was a really bad team. A second pairing role in Dallas, and that didn't work out very well. So I think a third pairing role, he's okay. But giving him 4 years, $4.5 million a year for a third pairing guy does not seem like a very wise investment to me. Yes, the Kings had plenty of cap space, but there's still business to do now and down the road, especially if you want to add somebody at the trade deadline. They still want to re-sign Adrian Kempe to a long-term contract. He's a UFA after this year. So I completely understand when you look at that contract, you're like, and you think that's an overpayment. And why would you want him for 4 years? I don't have an answer for that. I can understand wanting him maybe for 2 years at $2 million a year or something like that. But anything beyond that seems unwise. But he knows the player. He signed him in Edmonton. He apparently liked him there. But I totally understand why that signing in particular has drawn a lot of criticism. I think that's fair. I like Brian Dumoulin. I understand the term for him was not great either, but I think, if he's a second pairing guy, if he's the guy they plug in to replace Gavrikov, I can understand. I think he can handle that role. He was really good in the playoffs for New Jersey this past year, but these are all, looking at 1 year, how is it going to work out? Beyond that, I don't know. But for the Kings right now, it's all about just having some progress in the playoffs. And, it's been very frustrating. Granted, playing the Oilers 4 years in a row, a team that obviously has had success in the playoffs, 2 straight finals appearances, you can make the argument it's just bad luck. And I think we're all very curious to find out if the Kings could get by them, how far could they go? Is it just that they can't get by that very good team? It's kind of, if you want to call it bad luck with the way the playoffs are set up in the format. We'll see, but it all depends on just getting past that first round and then seeing what happens.
What were your feelings about the draft for the LA Kings?
I thought it was solid. A lot of picks. They've been a team of late because they've been a playoff team that has obviously picked farther down the line. They've not been, they're in that position a lot of fans talk about, and it's fair. Good enough to make the playoffs, but not bad enough to get any real impactful players in the draft. That can be true. I did think last year they did really well in the draft with their first 2 picks in a guy named Liam Greentree, who had a phenomenal year in the OHL this past year, and then a goaltender, Carter George, who's the World Junior goalie for Canada. Those are their 2 number 1 prospects now, and I think those guys will be NHL contributors in the next couple of years or so. So that was great. Hopefully they did more of the same this year. This draft was apparently not as deep as a lot of drafts. So I think they're, hoping that, and the Kings have done really well with their later picks, with 4th, 5th, 6th round picks. They've done very, very well, which is pretty surprising. But I think the draft was okay for them. I don't think there's certainly any stars that are coming out of this crop that they selected, but they hope that there's at least two solid contributors at some point.
All right, Eddie, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Locked On LA Kings, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube. Always encourage people to put the LA part in there, or else you'll get a basketball team in Sacramento. And they can follow the show on social media at Locked On LA Kings.
All right, Eddie, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and even makes regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Again, bet just $5 and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started.